Hi, everybody. This is Perry Saunders at the White Pigeon Township Library, and we are excited to bring you Tuesday Talk with Susie Finkbeiner. We today have, to my left, I think that's left, we have Heidi Needham, who's on our board, myself, who's the director. Down below me, I've got Judy Broadworth. She's on our staff. Way at the bottom, we've got Sue Potts, who has thankfully joined us today. And we do have Susie Finkbeiner over here in the corner. And she is a West Michigan author, so she's a local girl here. And she is the author of All Manner of Things, the Pearl Spence series, among other books. And she is here to talk today about her newest book, The Nature of Small Birds. Welcome, Susie. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I love doing library events. They make me so happy. And librarians are some of my very favorite people in the world. And I'm not just saying that to butter you up.
Well, we are so glad to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about your writing journey, your new book, anything you want?
Sure, I'd love to. I've been writing since I was a very small girl. It was just something I did for fun for a long time. And one day I just thought, well, maybe I'll try to write a novel and see what happens. And then 10 years later, here I am. This July, I think this is my 8th novel releases. And it is a book that is set in 3 different timelines. So it's set in 1975 at the end of the Vietnam War, and 1988 and 2013. And the reason that I wrote that way is because I'm telling the story of a family that adopts a little girl from Vietnam. And I realized I couldn't just tell the story in 1975. I realized adoption is a lifelong story. And I really wanted to represent that in this novel. And it is actually set in Northwest Michigan in a fictional town called Bear Run. So this novel is part love story to the state I adore. And I am a big Michigan fan, not the university. I'm an MSU fan, but the state of Michigan. And part just a story about family and what it means to be family, and how family is the process of letting people go so that they can grow and that they can come back.
Wonderful. I'm just going to let you keep going. You can tell us about any of your other books. Just let us have it.
All right, I will. All but one of my books is actually set in Michigan, which is kind of interesting to me. One of them was set in Oklahoma. It's called A Cup of Dust, and it's set during the Dust Bowl. And it's about a family that is trying to survive in Oklahoma during the Depression, but also during this huge environmental disaster. And that is a whole series. And eventually they moved to Michigan because I love Michigan. And then I also have All Manner of Things, which was a Michigan notable book. And this book is also set in the 1960s. And it is about a family whose son goes to Vietnam, and it's about reconciliation and forgiveness and the bonds of family and hope. It really is a story of hope. And then after that, I've got a second 1960s era novel called Stories That Bind Us that released last June. And this is set in 1963. And it's a story about how the stories that we tell, the stories that we live, they draw us together as a family unit. And one of the overarching themes of all of my books is hope and just holding on to the realization that things can get better and we can help each other to heal from whatever wounds we have, and the importance of family. And I think that it's just so funny to me that these themes always come up no matter what I try to do with the novel I'm writing. These themes always come back, and that's always so much fun for me to see that.
That is great. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions from the gallery, and I'm going to change to our gallery view. I'll go ahead and start. I just finished A Cup of Dust. Really liked it.
Thank you.
I can't hardly wait to read the next in the series. And I just wondered how you did your research on that, and how you got the inspiration for that book and that series.
Oh yeah. When I was 17 years old, I read The Grapes of Wrath, and as many of us did, right, in high school. And while a lot of my classmates were complaining about it, I thought this is what literature should be. And I became a tiny bit obsessed with John Steinbeck. And I had heard my entire life about the Great Depression from my grandma, but she lived in Michigan. And so she didn't have that experience. So it was another facet of the Great Depression that really intrigued me. And so for 20 some years, anytime I saw anything about the Dust Bowl, I would just read it, or the Ken Burns documentary. I'd watch it over and over and over because it was so interesting to me. And I was so enthralled with the perseverance and the fortitude of these people to survive such a thing. And one day I said to my husband, I think I'm going to write a Dust Bowl novel. And he said, it's about time. So really, the research, it was just me being curious. Sorry, my cat almost just jumped into the frame. So
that's okay.
We welcome cats.
She loves Zoom, but but the research just came out of my own curiosity and years of learning as much as I could.
You were talking about the family theme, and that idea that it can always get better and that kind of thing, that was really throughout that book. And I also read your newest book. You were nice enough to send us an advanced reader copy, so I read that, and yeah, it revolves tightly around that family and how they help each other grow. And so yeah, I've really enjoyed. I've only read 2 of your books, but I've really enjoyed them, and really would like to read more.
Thank you so much. I just think that, family, however that looks, it looks different for everyone. And sometimes family is who you share DNA with. Sometimes it's who you just share life with. And family is what grounds us and keeps us going a lot of the time. And so I know for me, family has been so essential, and I know I'm not alone in that.
True. Heidi, do you have a question for Susie?
Well, I read All Manner of Things this week, and I loved it. And the family thing, of course, is there, as well as the community and the church support that the family gets, even though they had basically a life of tragedy. But I was curious about the set of grandparents who had the one father and the uppity daughter that lived in Grand Rapids, because it didn't seem to follow that they weren't the kindest. Well, I guess she did turn around, didn't she? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was just so different than the main character family. And
Well,
yet
yeah.
they were all kind of family.
I think, every family has those that her name's Aunt Rose, and she thinks she's above everybody. And I know that most people I know have a family member that acts that way, and you'll learn to love them because you have to, because they're they're related, and also they ended up needing her. They really did. And she ended up needing them too. And sometimes we don't like our family members, right? None of my family members watching this. I love you all.
There's a few.
Did we ever meet her husband, ever?
No, you didn't. And that
I
was
even wondered
intentional.
if he really existed.
Your guess is as good as mine, because as I was writing it, I thought, how funny would it be if she thinks she's so grand and wonderful and has it all together, and really that's an act.
Oh, well, that was obvious, I think.
Yeah.
Susie, did you have a member or a close friend that had to go off to Vietnam? And who was that person?
It was actually my dad. My dad is a veteran. And so until I started researching the Vietnam War, I had no idea how much it influenced and impacted my childhood, even though I wasn't born yet. I was born in 78, so it had been over for a while. But just the way that my dad functioned as a father, the little quirky things he did, stories he would tell, habits he had that he got from being in Vietnam. And when I told him that I was going to be writing a book in the Vietnam era stateside, at the home front, he, without even me asking, he's also a writer, and he wrote his memoir of his time in Vietnam. And I'm not talking like 90 pages. He wrote like almost 400 pages only for me to research. That was the only purpose of it. And so I learned so much about him, and I learned about my childhood, because I understood, oh, okay, that's why you did these things. And, one of my uncles was stationed in the Philippines during the Vietnam War, and all of my husband's uncles were too. So at different places and different times.
You were very fortunate to have all those relations who were involved, you not being alive during that time. I did not have any of my relations involved in the Vietnam War, just friends. And it turned out that they were never involved in combat. Doctors, persons who were mechanics that did not have to be in the battle. So that was a different side of the story that I knew. And of course, anything that was shown on TV,
Yes.
the news.
Yeah. I think that's something that people don't always think about, are the many different jobs that are required at wartime. It's not just combat soldiers, even though there are many of them. And I was surprised. I did meet with a few veterans who are not related to me, because sometimes that's easier to find things out.
Right.
I was really surprised how forthcoming they were about things. One of my husband's uncles will not stop. He won't talk about it ever. I understand. Yes. I understand, but it's kind of mixed with people that are willing to talk a lot and people who aren't. But I'm very grateful for the people who were able to confide in me, because that made the novel that much more authentic, I think.
I was about 10 during the 60s. And so then I was starting in like junior high. So I was too young for my friends to be drafted. But, you know, there were kids in high school at that time whose numbers were coming up and stuff. But my daughter-in-law asked during COVID and during the election time and the Black Lives Matter time, you know, have you ever known such a time to be so awful as this? And I said to her, those 60s era, that was a horrible time for me.
That was something.
As a 10 to, you know, 15-year-old, whatever. I mean, the news was horrible every night. You know, the college campuses were being shot at by National Guard people. I mean,
right. The race riots in Detroit. I mean,
civil rights everywhere. It was just, well, the murders of Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy. All of that was when I was that age. And I don't think anybody, well, the draft dodging and the card burning, nobody would have volunteered to be in the service. And that's why when the towers went down on 9/11 and my daughter's age kids were all enlisting in the service, even though they wouldn't have had to, they just wanted to go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, our era would never have done that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of echoes. Having researched and studied the 60s for so long, and even the 30s, both of those decades were packed full of things that happened historically and big cultural, social change. And I'm seeing a lot of those echoes, but almost for us, it's in a more condensed time frame. It's all happening in 1 year or in 4 years. You know, it's almost more rapid fire. And I wonder if that's part of that is the super information we have coming at us nonstop. But it was hard for me writing about the 60s to leave some things out because there was just so much. There was so much that happened. And for instance, I schedule with my novels, I print out the calendar of the year that I'm writing. And then I write what happens throughout the novel on the day. The day that All Manner of Things ends is the day before the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Because I was like, I can't go there right now with this story because there's no time. That deserves something else. So, and I wanted to end with extreme hope, and that was not a hopeful thing. So but that was how it was for the entire 60s. I had to be very careful about when I had things happen because the next day it could be this big explosion of news. So you're right. It was a very tumultuous time, and the culture of the United States was changing. And we are seeing that now in huge ways. We really are.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have to be careful about how we react and respond. And we have to remember, you know, one thing about the 60s that I saw over and over is people having to respond for themselves and not try to force someone else to respond the way they wanted them to, because that wasn't going to help. That wasn't going to happen. And I think that's something important for our times too.
Judy, did you have a question for Susie?
First of all, Susie, I really want to thank you for being with us as library people. It's always a real highlight when we can have an author either in person or on Zoom. So your time means so much to us, and thank you. My question has probably kind of been answered, but I grew up in the 60s too. I was a teenager, graduated from high school in the early 70s, but I was wondering why you have the fascination with that era. And now I'm beginning to think it's probably because your parents instilled that in you. Am I correct?
You know, yes. When I was also, I was in the 90s when I was young and naive. I used to think I was born in the wrong era. I should have been a teenager in the 60s because I love the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the bell bottoms and the hair was amazing. I love the entire, there was such a fashion shift in the 60s, and I love every single thing that people wore, like the gloves.
I wish I still had some of my clothes from the 60s. Really.
I wish I had some of my mom's clothes, except that she's tiny and I'm not. So it wouldn't have happened, but and history is a real like big love of mine. I'm passionate about history. And so I have a fixation on the 60s, and it's just so intriguing to me. And now that I know more about the 60s, I think, gosh, that was a hard time to live through. The 90s were a lot easier. They really were. We had crazy music.
I always learned to be from the 50s in those house dresses that women, I mean, so maybe it's just part of it. And the music, I mean, I'm a Frank Sinatra, Perry Como type. Even though I know all the songs from the 60s and 70s, it's like the 50s to me would have been much more pleasant.
That was a great time.
I'm actually
of it, but
I'm currently finishing up a novel set in 1952, and I really, something inside me just desires a pair of saddle shoes so badly, and a poodle skirt.
Oh, I have a poodle skirt that was my mother-in-law's.
I had a poodle
The
skirt
waist is about like this. I mean, she must have had a 19-inch waist.
Well, thank
Good
you.
for her.
I'm glad you're right about the 60s. I did love a lot of things about the 60s also. It's not a bad time to grow up.
Well, Susie, do you want to give one more plug for your new book that's coming out and what day it's coming out?
Sure, I will always plug it. The Nature of Small, I'm sorry, this is shiny. The Nature of Small Birds releases July 6th. And you can, if you order a copy from Baker Book House, you will probably get it before the release date, because they always get it early. And I hope that if you do read it, you enjoy it, and that it inspires you to learn more about the era of the 70s, which was also very fun to write about.
Well, we just thank you so much, Susie, for your time, and thank you for visiting with us today. You've become one of our new favorite authors, and I hope we have a lot of patrons that come in and read your books. We do have our copy of The Nature of Small Birds already, so that will be out the first day we can get it out.
Here we go.
There it is.
Oh, yes. Judy's got the advanced reader copy.
I'm sitting here right with it right now.
This is Twix. The bird's name is Twix.
That's cute.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you so much again, Susie. And we are looking forward to The Nature of Small Birds and your future novels.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here, Susie. We appreciated it. Thank you.
Maybe, Susie, you can come visit us in person sometime. That would be fun to meet you.
We'd love that.
It's a great, easy drive.
Let's make it happen.
Okay. All right. We'll be in touch.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Like I said, we will have Susie's new book out. Was that July 6th? Was that?
Yes.
No, okay, July 6th, we'll have it out ready. And we will plan on getting that on Libby also, so you can download it when you're ready to do that too. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.